The pounding at my ranch gate wasn't the knock of a neighbor. It was the metallic clang of fists against steel, urgent, hostile, the kind of sound that sends adrenaline flooding your veins before your brain catches up. I strode out onto the porch, boots crunching gravel, and there they were. 3 uniformed officers standing stiff beside Karen, the obese tyrant of our HOA, her smug grin stretched wide like she'd finally won her endless war against me. Her voice rang out like a judge delivering a death sentence. By order of the HOA, this land is being repossessed. Step aside, or the police will escort you off. For a heartbeat, I thought it was some kind of sick prank. Repossess my land. This ranch had been in my family for 4 generations, deeded and recorded long before the HOA even existed. I'd bled on this soil, trained soldiers on it, buried my dog under the oak tree at the far end. It was mine. Yet here stood Karen, waving a stack of papers like scripture, her chin lifted as if she owned the horizon. I walked slowly to the gate, meeting the officers' eyes one by one. They looked uncomfortable, shifting on their feet, their hands nowhere near their weapons. They knew something was wrong. "Let me guess," I said, my voice cold as stone. Karen filed another complaint. She bristled, waving the papers higher. "Not a complaint. A court order. You violated community rules. This property is being seized for redevelopment." She spat the last word like it was a gift, like bulldozers were already waiting behind her. I extended my hand. "Let me see that order." She hesitated, then shoved the papers at me. The moment my eyes scanned them, I laughed. It wasn't a real court order, it was a forged document stamped with a fake seal, written on HOA letterhead with Karen's sloppy signatures all over it. I raised the paper high, so the crowd gathering at the fence could see. "This is fraud," I said, my voice carrying across the land. "Karen forged legal documents to steal what she can't touch." Gasps rippled through the neighbors, phones rose like 100 blinking eyes, and Karen's smirk twitched. That was when the truth came alive in me like fire. I motioned for the officers to step back, and I unlocked the side gate, letting them in. "Gentlemen," I said, "you're standing on private property owned by a veteran, protected by federal easements, and covered under state conservation law. If you try to enforce her lies, you'll be in violation of the Constitution itself." The lead officer's face went pale. He shook his head. "We were told this was legitimate. We don't want part of this." He gestured to Karen, but she shrieked. "Do your jobs. Remove him." Before the standoff could erupt, the twist I hadn't expected came rolling up the road. A convoy of trucks, me old unit, fellow veterans I'd trained with years ago, pulled in, their tires spitting dust. They'd been visiting nearby for a reunion and had come when I sent a single message. "Karen's trying to take the ranch." Men and women in faded camo stepped out, their presence a wall of unspoken strength. The crowd hushed. Even the officers backed up a step. Karen's eyes widened, her confidence trembling as she realized this wasn't just me standing. Allenite was an army of witnesses who knew the law, knew loyalty, and knew how to face down tyranny. One of my brothers in arms, Jackson, stepped forward, towering over Karen. "Ma'am," he said, voice steady, "this isn't your land. You don't get to bully families with forged papers. You've just committed a felony." Karen sputtered, her face blotchy with rage, her words tripping over themselves. You can't scare me with costumes. You think showing up in your little army gear changes anything?" Jackson smiled grimly. "It changes everything. Because we know the law, and we know how to defend what's ours." The officers conferred quietly, then stepped away from Karen. One leaned in and whispered, but I heard him clear as day. "You're on your own." Her face drained of color, but still she raged, shouting at the neighbors, calling us traitors, threatening endless lawsuits. But the cameras caught everything: the forged document, the attempted theft, the harassment. And when she realized her empire was crumbling right there in the dirt, she did what Karen always does. She pulled out her phone, dialed 911, and claimed she was being attacked by armed men. The cruelty of it sent a chill through the crowd. She was willing to bring more police, more chaos, even risk bloodshed, just to cling to her fantasy of power. But it didn't work. When dispatch answered, I stepped forward, holding up the fake order for the camera. "This is on video," I told her calmly. "Every word, every lie. Call whoever you want. The truth will bury you." Neighbors cheered. Phones filmed. And Karen, for once, looked small against the wide, open sky she thought she could own. Karen's frantic call to 911 backfired faster than even I imagined. Within 20 minutes, more squad cars arrived, sirens piercing the summer air, lights spinning red and blue across the open field. But instead of storming the property as Karen had hoped, the officers walked straight toward me and the veterans who stood at my side. They didn't see armed aggressors, they saw people calm, steady, and standing on land with documents ready in hand. I handed over the real deed, the conservation easement, and the original land grant bearing my grandfather's name. The officers studied them carefully, nodding slowly, their faces darkening as they realized the truth. Karen, still clutching her phone, shouted over and over, "Arrest him! Arrest all of them! This is HOA jurisdiction." But her shrill demands sounded more desperate with every word. Then came the twist no one expected. A county prosecutor, alerted by my wife who had been quietly watching from our porch, arrived in a dark sedan. She stepped out with a folder so thick it looked like it carried the weight of a decade. "Karen Trask," she said firmly, her voice echoing across the crowd. "You are under investigation for fraud, forgery, and abuse of authority." The murmurs surged like a wave through the neighbors. Karen blinked, then laughed, that ugly nervous laugh she always fell back on. "You can't investigate me, I am the president. I'm untouchable." The prosecutor raised an eyebrow. "No one is untouchable, especially not when you file false court orders and impersonate law enforcement to seize land." The officers didn't hesitate this time. They stepped behind Karen, clicking cold steel around her wrists. Her meltdown was spectacular. She kicked, screamed, cursed every neighbor by name. "You'll regret this. All of you. This neighborhood was mine." Her voice cracked as the crowd erupted in cheers. Neighbors who had been silenced for years suddenly free to shout their rage. Phones rose higher, recording every second. Karen's reign had ended not with a vote or a complaint, but in handcuffs, her forged empire collapsing in the dust. The trial months later was everything we had hoped for and more. In a packed courthouse, her crimes were laid bare. Falsifying documents, siphoning HOA funds into secret accounts, intimidating families with fake fines, and finally, conspiring to steal land for personal gain. Witness after witness testified: families she'd threatened, elderly couples she'd bullied, even the two officers she had misled at the gate. The veterans from my unit showed up in uniform jackets, sitting shoulder to shoulder in the gallery, a silent reminder of the strength she had underestimated. The evidence was overwhelming, but the moment that sealed her fate was when the locksmith, Luis, testified. He described how she had tricked him into making the master key, only to use it as a tool for control. The jury gasped as the key was presented in evidence, its cheap brass gleaming under the courtroom lights. When the verdict was read guilty on all counts, the room erupted in applause. Karen's face twisted with disbelief, her bulk trembling as deputies escorted her away. She screamed about conspiracies, corruption, betrayal, but her voice was drowned by the sound of neighbors cheering, hugging, some even crying with relief. Her sentence was 15 years in prison, restitution for every dollar she had stolen, and a lifetime ban from holding any position in a homeowners association. But the story didn't end with Karen's downfall. The HOA, stripped of its corrupt leadership, collapsed under county order. In its place, the community voted to form a cooperative council, run not by fear or fines, but by collaboration. The first meeting was nothing short of revolutionary. Families spoke freely, kids played outside without being scolded, and people who hadn't looked each other in the eyes for years were finally laughing together again. My ranch, once the target of her greed, became a symbol. The veterans helped me fortify it into a training ground for community safety search and rescue drills, first aid classes, even survival workshops. What Karen had tried to turn into her prize became everyone's refuge. The mural painted on the barn said it all, a soldier standing tall before a barbed wire fence. The words "This land stands free" painted above in bold strokes. Every time I pass it, I feel the weight of what we endured, but also the strength of what we built together. Karen thought she could steal, threaten, and control forever. But she forgot one thing: truth doesn't bow to fear. And I'll admit, there are nights when I sit on my porch, watching the sunset bleed across the horizon, and I wonder what might have happened if I hadn't stood firm that day. What if I'd let her win? Let the forged papers dictate reality? Would the land still be ours? Would the neighbors still be caged in silence? The thought chills me every time. So I ask you now, when someone like Karen abuses power, bends rules into weapons, and dares to steal what isn't hers, should we look the other way for peace or stand our ground, even if it means turning a neighborhood into a battlefield? Was I right to fight back, to expose her lies, to make her empire crumble, or should I have taken the safer path? Tell me, was I right or wrong?